Hello and welcome to General Games Highlander event. It is the 20th of May, and here we have round 3. We have Paul Mitchell on Blue Moon versus Graham King on Big Red. My name's Jimbo. I'm joined in the booth by Richard Owen.
Hi guys.
Richard's a bit of a Highlander aficionado, recently won a Mox at a Grand Prix Highlander event. Pretty sweet.
It was a good win. My first probably big win in Highlander.
Yeah, I mean, I've seen you win a signed volcanic island of some sort as well.
It's probably my other only real tournament finish. I have not won a league yet, unfortunate.
Right. So we're here playing Highlander, Australian 7-point Highlander. For those who don't know, it's a format that uses the vintage ban list and has a points list associated with it. Various cards come with points values. You can only play 7 points worth of cards in your deck. For example, Ancestral Recall is 4 points. Vampiric Tutor is 3. Oath of Druids is a mere 1. Sol Ring is 3. And so on and so forth. Players are playing pretty quick. We've got Paul Mitchell on a Blue Moon strategy. He's going to be playing a lot of control-oriented cards, counterspells, cantrips, the usual, and closing out the game with Blood Moon, Back to Basics, Planeswalkers, Gear Hulks. That sort of arrangement.
I think it's fair to say that this game, Graham needs to get off to an early lead. Paul Mitchell's definitely playing for the late game. If he can get to a space where he's 7 cards in hand, Graham doesn't have much going on, his counterspell is going to be pretty tough to deal with. So the fact that Graham only has 1 mana rock down is pretty good for Paul. I'd say he's definitely in a good spot right now. And this cycling Electrolyze makes sense. It's pretty dead against Graham's deck. All his threats are huge. That won't kill anything. He just wants to draw into card draw and counterspells.
So Graham's deck had the turn 2 Talisman, was countered by a spell Snare. Nice little tempo up there. Turn 3 Talisman as well. Ooh, we see a Blood Moon off the top for Graham. That's
pretty dead in this matchup. Both players are running Blood Moon, so it's we could definitely see that card get sideboard out.
Yeah, you can see 4 basics in play for one player, 3 and a 2 and a fetch land for Paul over there as well. They're both main decking Blood Moon, which means that it's fairly bad in the matchup.
Speaking of though, I think Graham still casts it because he's true mono red. Like obviously he's not going to cast it as a Glory Bringer instead, but if he has nothing else to do, I would still expect him to cast it.
Sure.
So I think that just got bounced.
Yeah, Venser's back to the hand. It doesn't really matter if it was as a spell or as a creature at that point.
No reason to let it get in play, I guess, but it doesn't make much difference. So the 2/2 isn't super relevant, but it's more... So that's not great for Paul because he's spending a card just on tempo.
Yeah.
So he needs to recoup that with some card draw somehow at some point in this game, but he has plenty in his deck, so it shouldn't be too big an issue.
Yeah, I mean, tempo plays are always awkward to call against the deck with 3, 4, 5 main deck dragons. 4...
You should know how many dragons there are. There are many.
That depends. Is Reality Smasher a dragon?
It's a 5 mana enormous creature with haste. So
that sounds like a dragon to me, yeah.
Close.
We got ourselves another dragon. Glory Bringer again, 5 mana Force of Will.
That's actually really good for Paul. The fact he has time to hardcast it means, again, he's saving another card. So that's big. Well, it's not huge, but it's definitely nice that he's not having to card disadvantage himself.
I mean, it's interesting. It's Force is good in this matchup in that you can just play a threat and then don't have to worry about the backswing from the dragon. So if you most of the time with this deck, if you just say cast a Jace and do something with it, and then your opponent untaps and casts a Thundermaw Hellkite, it's not just that the spell resolved and your Jace died.
Yeah, you can definitely use sort of that tempo to leverage into card advantage later or some other favourable board state. But I think Paul's game plan is going to be that Riptide Lab he's got in his hand. He's got 2 wizards in play now, and Highlander in particular, if that doesn't get stopped at some point.
Well, I mean, it's dead now. One way or another. See Slagstorm attempting to get some value. It's about the most you're going to get from it in this matchup.
Does that not kill the Venser?
It was countered by the Glenelendra.
Oh, of course, it actually resolved. Sorry, I saw Glenendra and assumed it resolved.
Graham has drawn all 3 of the sweepers in his main deck. The Slagstorm, the Fiery Confluence, and the Incendiary Command. There's my boy, Reality Smasher. Speaking of tempo plays, Reality Smasher is...
It's just a play. Value and tempo all rolled in one.
It's very big.
And I don't believe Paul has an answer. Oh, I could be wrong.
Aha. He always has the answer of the Venser. That's going to be frustrating to play through, but it does take all of Paul's mana.
It's 7 mana, but if it's repeatable, it's pretty strong.
Until Graham gets to the point where he can double spell.
Well, Paul has a Jace, so that's going to be handy here, because he'll be able to... if he plays the Jace, he won't have enough to bounce Venser, so we'll have to see if he thinks it's worth it.
What if he just plays Jace and bounces Venser?
He can do that, but then the Reality Smasher will get in for 5.
Then the Venser just comes back down and
But when you have to discard then, because you're targeting the Smasher?
you bounce it as a spell again. So as in, play the Jace, bounce the Venser with the Jace. And he'll have 4 mana left up to Venser the spell coming down from Graham, and then he'll be able to be in this situation.
Oh yeah, that works. Yeah, I missed that line.
That's the wrong Jace. That's not the Jace we were looking for. So he's offering up another opportunity for some sweet Pyroclasm value.
The Blood Moon's a bit surprising here, but it does stop off the Wizard Generator, so that's always useful.
Is that a Mouth of Ronan you see in Graham's hand?
That is absolutely a Mouth of Ronan. Off now because of the Blood Moon, but the 4 damage could have come up because Mouth of Ronan does 4 damage to a creature, bit of a janky card.
Yeah, it's fine. You get to play a lot of snow permanents in this deck.
Its whole mana base is Snow Mountains, so why not?
The deck needed another colourless source for the Reality Smasher and Thought Not Seer. So this is the one that Graham's decided to go with.
Well, that was actually pretty sick value from a relatively low card in Graham's deck in this matchup, I would say.
Yeah, definitely. Fire Confluence. Not many artifacts to hit with it in this deck. Being able to hit 2 creatures with it is great.
Yeah, pretty much the only other mode you could use is, unless you're finishing Paul off, is knocking off a Planeswalker. But getting a 2-for-1 with that, and Jace is pretty big. If you can't deal with it now, it isn't going to be easy to deal with. So,
well, I mean, it is important in this matchup. All of the sweepers in Graham's main deck can also go to the face. Fire Confluence can deal 6 to the face, Slagstorm 3 to the face, and Incendiary Command 4 to the face.
Definitely could come up with a Reality Smasher gets a few hits in, but right now Paul's still at 15, so he's reasonably healthy.
Yeah, it's basically just going to hinge on this Smasher. Down to 10.
Factors resolved. Blue Moon isn't great at dealing with in-play creatures that have more than 3 toughness.
Oh, Graham is on 8. That's worth noting. Snapcaster. Ooh, is this lethal?
I believe that is. That's game.
Ooh.
Bolt, snap, bolt. The modern classic.
Feels a bit like a steal, but...
I thought Graham was in a good spot there. I did not see the Mitchell draw the Snapcaster.
Off to the sideboard we go. Graham's got a few toys to work with. I do have some idea of his sideboard. I don't know much about Paul's.
I know he has a fairly sweet enchantment, the Price of Glory.
Graham does, definitely
yes.
not Paul.
Paul will not be bringing that in.
Graham showing an Aether Flash after he lost to, was that 4 creatures with 2 power or 2 toughness or less?
I mean, I don't think he brings that in.
No, Aether Flash probably not the best in this matchup. We will be looking at Price of Glory. We will be looking at Red Blast.
Red Blasts are very good in this matchup, obviously, against a primarily blue deck.
You may even see a Chroma Angel of red.
Oh, the Wrath? Oh, so it's called something different when it's the time-shifted version.
One's Fury and one's Wrath.
Wrath is the white one.
Okay, so Fury then.
Okay, Fury is definitely the red one then.
May see a Chroma Angel.
I mean, if you're going to put it in your sideboard, I think this is the matchup for it. I mean, maybe blue-white, it's better because it is immune from the swords because of the pro-white. But, I mean, Can't Be Countered is a strong line of text against a counterspell deck.
Let's be honest, it's immune to Lightning Bolt too. It has protection from red spells because they don't deal 6 damage.
You'd have to double bolt it. Come up because I think it has 6 toughness.
6 toughness.
Yes.
6/6, flying, haste, a bunch of other keywords.
Don't think it has lifelink though. I think it's the important one that it's missing. Has first strike. Has trample. Important? Well, maybe not in this matchup, but it's certainly powerful.
Flying, trample, protection from white and blue, fire breathing, and morph.
Yeah, good card. I guess you can also try and slam it down on turn 2 with a Mana Rock or a Mox or something.
I feel that the morph isn't going to be that relevant. That does definitely open it up to burn spells.
No, it does. But if he gets a really threat-heavy hand and just a little bit of mana, he might just want the 2/2.
That said, you have to ask how many removal spells Paul's going to be leaving in.
He'll certainly be expecting to take a significant amount of those Bolt-style cards because they're just so blank against a lot of Graham's threats.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, a lot of Paul's sideboard will consist of anti-creature counterspells, things like Negate, Spell Pierce, Foster Storm, Mindbreak Trap.
Yep.
Those style of counterspells are very common in Highlander because they're very good against the combo decks.
Yep.
Against Graham, a lot of his threats are creatures, so it's interesting to see how many of those Paul will be able to justify bringing in.
Yeah, so your threats in the big red deck, they're sort of a 50-50 split between your planeswalkers and your creatures. You've got Ugin, Khan, Chandra, Sarkhan, Koth, and just the 5 planeswalkers. But then on the creature side, you've got the Reality Smasher, the Thought Not Seer, the Wormcoil Engine, the Reality Smasher, some more dragons, Glorybringer, Thundermaw, Hellkite.
You can probably justify the Negate pretty easily, but bringing in cards like Spell Pierce and Foster Storm, I think, will be much harder to justify.
Yeah, Negate can always hit an early mana rock, say if he draws a Soul Ring early in the game, but not too early.
Yeah, and then you can still snipe walkers later, because Graham will end up with more mana that he can use at some point if this game goes the way Paul wants it to.
Yeah, for sure.
I don't think, I mean, he did manage to steal that game with Snap Bolt, but I wouldn't imagine that's his main game plan.
No, that was very, very cool.
Oh, now it looks like there's a Mindbreak trap in Paul's opener, so it's interesting that he brought that in.
It's possibly just better than a card like Burst Lightning.
I mean, you can just hardcast it.
Yeah, 4 mana exile.
4 mana counterspell is not unplayable. In this matchup in particular, if it goes long, hard counters are what you want.
Especially if you're considering there may be some sort of recurring threat.
None comes to mind, but there might be something.
Yeah, no, look, you're probably right.
But yeah,
there's not that much recursion in mono red. But yeah, sometimes 4 mana counterspell is better than Burst Lightning.
Burst Lightning is not exciting. So it seems reasonable to me.
Oh, look, you can Burst Lightning a Solemn Simulacrum.
You're losing in that trade. Spoiler alert. So Paul's mulling to 5, I think, now.
All right. Well, let's go to game 3 then. No, there's definitely some play to it. Do you know if Paul plays a Splinter Twin package in his list?
He certainly doesn't. The Splinter Twin package is not very common in the CBD Highlander meta.
Okay.
It's more common up north.
Sure.
And I think in the Eastern Highlander League, it sees a bit more play.
There's definitely a bit of Splinter Twin.
But yeah, in the CBD League, it's extremely control heavy, which is where Paul plays most of his games.
Yeah, sure.
So it's hard to justify Splinter Twin when in the control mirror, you just open up yourself to removal and you end up very behind. For example, in the last league I played 5 out of 6 control mirrors.
Wow.
So it's pretty control heavy.
That's my kind of magic.
Oh, I had lots of fun. I did well in such an environment.
Yep.
I played the control deck with more counters than the other guy. So it was a good spot.
All right, Graham with no mana rock opening here.
No, he plays a lot, so that's unfortunate. Though Paul has Melt to 5, so he probably doesn't need to be as fast.
Was that a Blood Moon?
I saw a Mind Stone. Not sure about Blood Moon. I think that's Price of Glory. I don't believe that's a Blood Moon. Because I think Graham's was a Dark Blood Moon, and that looked whiteboarded.
Yeah, okay, sure. There's a Mind Stone for sure, yep.
And there's a Sneak Attack, I think, is in his hand as well.
A Spell Snare again.
Oof.
It's not so bad in the tempo exchange here, because the extra mana is not being spent by Paul.
I'm interested that Graham even kept Sneak Attack in. I would have thought there's not that many amazing threats to Sneak Attack in that he wouldn't want to just hardcast.
Yeah, I mean, the issue is if you think you can resolve, if you think you're only going to be able to sneak in one threat, as in sneak one threat in through counterspells, and it's a sneak attack, then that resolves all of your dragons, so to speak.
That's true. I guess it lets everything do a certain amount of damage.
Yeah. Whereas, if you get to resolve a Thundermaw Hellkite and then he counters all of the rest of your dragons and planeswalkers for the rest of the game, that's less damage overall than one sneak attack.
I guess it depends what Graham views his role is. Does he think he can win that 20-turn game against Paul, or is he just trying to jam threats as soon as possible and just get that big mana advantage on turns 2 and 3, and then slam some big threats? So, not sure what his plan is, but he's playing the sneak attack.
We see the sneak attack.
Well, certainly cast it if it's in your deck. The question is whether you want it in your deck, and depends on what else you think you have to sideboard in.
Censor.
Oh, that's a savage new card.
Spicy, Paul.
I think it's really good in Highlander. It's like miscalculation, but cycles for 1 less. So I think that's going to be a staple moving forward.
It doesn't counter anything. It counters unless they pay 1, which is... I've played against a fair share of days, and it always feels good knowing that my opponent has days in hand, because it just doesn't do anything.
The fact that cycles in these sort of blue decks, though, where you've got... It feels Delve, which is not blank.
Yep. Sure.
You just want to see a lot of cards.
Yep.
Just thins your deck, which in a format like Highlander is more relevant than other formats because the disparity in power level between your different cards is greater just because you have to play more fillery style cards.
Yep.
So I would be surprised if that's not, at least in most blue control decks, in a couple of years. But we'll see. Because they don't print good counterspells very often. Or even playable I wouldn't say it's good, but...
Is Paul playing a Disallow? That's another recent counterspell that has made some lists that I've seen, but not
I've seen it around. I haven't seen Paul play it, but he might be. Not 100% on that one.
Has he got the counter for the Wormcoil
He has
engine?
the counterspell.
Oh. Poor Graham. Opponent mulligans to 5 and just...
Has all the counters.
Still doesn't get to play Magic.
Having said that, he must be running low in cards now. And Graham has a top in play, so you'd hope he'd be able to get a consistent stream of threats going.
I think Paul's on 2 cards. Graham is also on 2 cards, both of which might be lands. No, one's a Talisman.
It's almost a land. He needs Mind Stone to get that cycling. So we could have the issue of Graham getting flooded and just not having any threats, and the fact that Paul's down on cards might not matter.
Yeah, fingers crossed that the Sensei Stop does some work in preventing that.
Oh, there's still certainly some way to go before that comes to play, but this is the first step. Graham getting a little bit flooded, and there's at least one land, a Chalice, something else on top.
So we see that Wormcoil Engine was the payoff for the sneak attack. That was what he was attempting to do.
That card in particular is particularly good off sneak attack. So is that Chalice for 1, I believe?
That is Chalice on 1.
It's actually interesting what he wants to do. 2 or 1 is certainly a decision.
Sure. So on 1, it does turn off his ability to use Sensei's Divining Top to draw cards.
Turns off all his mana rocks at 2 is the only other issue. Yep. So I can see why he does it at 1.
The deck actually only plays 3 1-drops, if I recall correctly. Sensei's Top, Soul Ring, and Mana Vault.
Doesn't play Goblin Welder? It's not enough artifacts?
It does have some similarities to the red Workshops list that you see around. They're playing, Workshop, a whole bunch of fast mana. You can see Crucible of Worlds, some more prison-oriented cards.
I believe that deck does play the Welder.
Yeah, so that list definitely does. It also plays things like Lodestone Golem and Sphere of Resistance. We see a Wasteland coming out.
Seems reasonable. There's no point hanging on to it, and Paul's a little mana screwed, so...
We see a bunch of text written on that Wasteland as well. Interesting.
It's certainly been altered by something.
Cryptic Command, Bouncing the Volcanic.
Interesting. So I would assume that means Paul doesn't have another land.
Ooh, Hedron Archive.
That's going to draw 2 cards.
Yeah, you were talking about Mindstone.
That's a better Mindstone, for sure.
Oh, maybe a double.
I mean, that's a real strength of these cards, is when you get mana flooded.
So here's an important note for Graham. He bounced the Volcanic Island. When it's sitting next to a Steam Vents, the correct option 9 times out of 10 is to destroy the Steam Vents, because if they do have a way to recover it, whether it's
yes, you can make them pay the 2 life.
Yeah, whether it's with Regrowth, whether it's with Cryptic Command, Crucible of Worlds, you'd rather them play another Steam Vents than play another Volcanic Island.
Yeah, that makes total sense. Probably no real scenario where it wouldn't be correct to do it, just in case. Little 1% of it came up. Cavern of Souls. I'm assuming that's naming Wizard, but...
We'll get some notes from our production team and find out. Yep, that is on Wizard.
I'm surprised that that's even in the deck, because you'd think with Back to Basics and Blood Moon it'd be hard to justify. But
Well, here we see a Teferi coming down.
I believe that, I'm assuming that's end of turn?
Yeah.
Yeah, it would not make a lot of sense otherwise.
Teferi is a 3/4, too big for Fiery Confluence.
That's true. It isn't particularly worrying for Graham. Most of his deck is sorcery speed anyway.
Here we see a Price of Glory.
I think that was the card on top from top before.
Sure. So this is a 3-mana enchantment. It says, whenever a player taps a land for mana on another player's turn, destroy that land.
Yeah, it's certainly going to be tough for Paul with all his counterspells.
Not so tough for Graham, who's staring at a Teferi anyway.
Well, he's sort of forced to play by the rules anyway.
It is important to note now that he can't crack his Hedron Archive, which has just been knocked off the screen there. He can't crack that on his opponent's turn unless he wants to really lose some lands there. But, I mean, Talisman and Hedron Archive, they make some mana on the opponent's turn without getting destroyed. That's fine.
So how much mana exactly does Graham have? I believe he has 10 or so mana with the Hedron Archive.
Right, so Paul's going for the Cryptic off the Torrential Gearhulk. Very rough.
Is that just to draw a card and bounce something?
To counter the Price of Glory. Graham's
still in the stack. I didn't actually resolve.
So Graham's going to fire a Confluence to destroy target artifact and deal 4 to Paul, I'm assuming.
Makes sense. I mean, you can't kill Teferi. But still, dealing with the artifact's big, but...
Yeah, it's very good that the Gearhulk's not in play now. If the Gearhulk was still in play, Paul would just be on 2-turn clock, and that'd be very close to all she wrote.
Having said that, this game is swinging more in the direction that Paul wants. He's now starting to stock up his hand.
Yep.
He doesn't have too many lands in play just yet, so Graham really needs to get something going soon.
We see the Mindbreak Trap in his hand. Here it is just functioning as a hard counter.
Yeah, and it's certainly paid off to that point where it's just 4 mana hard counter. He has, a Fiery Ice in hand. I think it Izzet Charm. Izzet Charm's interesting. It's not particularly good against Graham's deck.
Yeah, it's just so versatile. It's possible that Paul just never considered boarding it out.
I mean, worst case, it cycles some lands if he does get to that point where he's a bit flooded and doesn't need that 8th land. And can certainly pick off a Mana Rock early or a on-curve Ugin or something like that.
We've lost the Hedron Archive again. It's just been shifted down off our screen. Here we see a Inferno Titan coming out.
Well, that certainly can't be allowed to resolve. It won't.
If Graham does still have that Hedron Archive in play, he's been punished here for tapping all of his red sources rather than any of his colourless for that. Oh no, the Hedron Archive's definitely in the graveyard. That's long gone. That happened a couple of turns ago. So remand on a 6-drop, is that good?
It's pretty good. Tempo is a thing. I mean, he has a Teferi that's been bashing for a few turns now.
Yeah, we're just going to check up on Graham's life total here, because 14 would be a lot.
Seems a bit high. No, he's down 8.
Down to 8, alright.
Well, that's 3 turns, and Paul has some counterspells. The Shackle's in hand. Still got the Izzet Charm, Fire Ice. So that's
Alright, hear me out here. A Chroma Angel of Fury.
It would certainly be a good card. Though, Mindbreak Trap would still deal with it because it's exile, not counter.
Spicy.
So maybe Paul was thinking of that when he bought it in.
Yeah, sure.
The anti-achroma tech.
Graham activating a Dust Bowl here. Is this during the end step, main phase? Sometime.
Not 100%, but I think Paul has enough mana.
All right. So the Inferno Titan's coming back down.
I'm assuming another counterspell of some kind will be used on this. So I'm assuming it will be Mindbreak Trap because I don't think Paul has much else, and I don't think he can afford to let it resolve. He's got 6 islands in play, so he could potentially cast Shackles and think about stealing it. He's at a little bit of a life total to work with, but that would certainly be a risky play. And Graham is effectively dead in 2 turns because if he uses the fire to do 2 damage, drops into 6, and Teferi attacks twice, he wins that way. So the Infernal Titan did indeed resolve, so it looks like he's going for the Shackles line, because he has the fetch in hand to get the 6th island.
That's very huge and very frustrating.
If I was Graham, I'd be a little unhappy right now.
Is he going to be able to resolve some sort of artifact removal? A pillage? Fire Confluence is already gone.
Has them in his deck, but I don't think he has them when he needs them.
You get that Fire Confluence back.
The big slam on the Infernal Titan.
Yep. Paul says, I'll have that one, thanks. Graham has definitely been punished by this Chalice of the Void, yeah.
He hasn't got any value from it.
Yeah.
So it's just been a blank card, unfortunately.
Interesting to note, Graham did Dust Bowl away a Cavern of Souls rather than an island.
Yeah, he probably wasn't thinking of the Shackles line, though.
Yeah, look, most people don't.
I wouldn't be worried about my Inferno Titan getting Shackles normally, but Blue Moon has a lot of islands. And
we're going to have to let them know that isn't how that card works, unfortunately.
What
if
did
the
they
producer
just do?
could let him know. That's right. But Alkan Shackles only needs to have islands when you activate the ability. If you destroy an island after the fact, the Titan's still going to stay in play.
Yeah, he really needs a removal for that Shackles, I think. And that's it.
That's going to be it. He's going to pack it up. A lot of little things going the wrong way for Graham there.
I mean, Paul mulled to 5 and still managed to get there, so
yeah,
impressive performance.
Definitely. Had the counterspells at the right moments for the right threats.
He had a lot of counterspells in game 2, particularly on a low card number.
Yeah, definitely.
Just had them all at the right time, and Graham couldn't get anything going.
It's an interesting matchup. I believe both of these players are still locked for the top 4, which means that we may see them back in the future rounds.
Well, this is round 3 of 3, is it?
Round 3 of 3, cutting to the top 4
They're
players.
both 2-1, so good breakers.
Paul's now 3-0.
Well, yeah, sorry.
Yep.
I mean, from Graham's perspective, he's 2-1.
He's 2-1, should have good breakers.
So he should be locked.
Should be locked.
There's only, I think, 8 players?
8 players today, yeah.
So
right.
he should be 100% okay.
Cool. All right, that's it for round 3. We're going to take a short break, and we will see you soon with the top 4.